let's finish up by adding a bump map. So if we take a look at this, we've got the color on the body, but it doesn't really look that convincing just because there's no bump like there is on this. You can't see really where the panels are divided. It just looks like a smooth surface. So what we can do is create a map that will show where those panels are and also give us some bump across the metal. So to do that, we can use our existing texture. Let's first turn off everything that we don't want involved in the bump. So anything that's stuck on or painted on, we don't really want. And so I can turn off the emblem. Let's turn off the shadows and the dirt. Let's turn off the stripes, the text labels, and this alien body count. And let's also turn off the vent. So really we're left with just the base color, which is this metallic color, and then also the panel lines. So if we look at the base color, you can see all these white scratches or light colored scratches. The thing about the bump map is that anything, it's going to be a grayscale map, and anything that's around 50% is going to look kind of the same. And then anything darker is going to appear to be pushed in, while anything lighter is going to appear to be kind of pulled out or raised off the surface. So if we were to use this and kept the scratches light, it would look like the scratches are raised off when in reality they would be cut into the surface. And so the first thing I'm going to do is duplicate this layer. And then let's take this and I'm just going to take any saturation out of this. So I'll kind of desaturate it. And let's also go in and invert it. So now you can see the scratches are a bit darker, but everything else is really too light. So let's go in and adjust the levels. I'm going to kind of darken everything up a little bit, and you can see how that kind of gives us a very dark look. I can hover over this to kind of see, kind of sample the color from that and kind of see what color that actually is. I can come in here and I can take the output levels down so it's a little bit darker. So maybe something like that. And again, we can come in and we can kind of sample this and see that's kind of 33. That's a 33% black. So we probably want it to be maybe a little bit lighter. So we could kind of lighten this up a little bit. So that's getting close. So let's go with something like that. Now we'll leave the panels on, and the black is going to help because it's going to push this in. It's going to match up exactly with the texture. So it'll appear that these panels are pushed in a little bit. So let's just go ahead and save this out and see how it looks. We can always adjust it later. So go to Save As. Let's choose JPEG, and let's just save this as Mech Bump. We'll say OK. All right, now to apply this, we'll go into our material, Control A for the attribute editor. And just like with the color, we'll come into the bump mapping, and we'll go ahead, click on the little box over to the right, and we'll choose File. Now there's a bump depth and use as bump. It's not a normal map. We're just going to use a bump map, so we'll leave that as is, and we'll go to File. And the image name is where we'll come in and add our mech bump. Now you can see it looks really, really bad. It looks really, really bumpy. And that's just because our map isn't totally dialed in. But we can also come in here and change the bump depth. So it doesn't have to be at 1. We can take this down a little bit. And you can see as we start to get down to lower amounts, it looks a lot better. Let's actually modify the material as well. So we can come in and let's take our reflectivity down, maybe the specular color down. We can also kind of change the specularity here to make that match a little bit more with the rest of the geometry. And go back in to the bump map. And so we might want to come in here and even a little bit more, maybe take this contrast down a little bit. Maybe something more like that. And we can save that back out. I'm just going to overwrite that. And then we can go in and reload it. And I'll change it a little bit. I don't think it changed it too much. But you can see now that as we move around, you can really start to see those divisions in the panels. It kind of looks like those are separate, even though it's still one piece of geometry. That's all happening inside of the map. We can still go in here. I feel like we can modify that spec a little bit more. So that looks a lot better. All right, so you can use your existing maps if you want to, or you can create completely new maps. Just keep in mind, it's you can use a color image, but really it's a grayscale values that it's looking at, and you can raise things up or lower things, push things in, and give your models the illusion of more detail than what's actually there. So I hope you've enjoyed going through the introduction, kind of going through the interface in Maya, also looking at modeling, building up this guy with different techniques. We actually went through covered a lot of stuff in the modeling portion, and also going through some of the materials and texturing here. But next, it's time to continue on and talk about things like rigging and animation and lighting and everything else that kind of Maya includes. It's a really big piece of software, and we're just kind of scratching the surface. If you are interested in anything that we've talked about and going deeper on that, we have lots of training. We have introductions geared specifically for different disciplines like modeling or animation. And so you can check those out, and they'll go a lot deeper into those things than what we were able to cover here. So next, you'll be able to come in and start to talk about rigging and animation, using an asset very similar to this with similar geometry and very similar textures to go through that process before you get into kind of the other parts, rendering and things like that. So take a break if you need to, but have fun going through the rest of the introduction to Maya. I had a lot of fun going through the first portion with you. Have a great time finishing out, and then once you're done, you'll be ready to go on your own projects here in Maya. Have fun.